There are so many wonderful design tools if you're just thinking about the whole Adobe products that are out there. And there is Canva. The idea is the mom and pops can use it to create things. So we see Artivive also a little bit as entry level for augmented reality. We want to make it as easy as our mothers can use. You need something like a trigger, a story that you want to tell in a digital space. And this story can be literally anything that's a digital asset. And maybe 10 minutes to upload it and test it.
Welcome to XR and AI Spotlight, the show that gives the stage to the founders and makers pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. My name is Gabriele Romagnoli, I'm your host, and I'm here today with Sergiu Ardelean. Sergio is a serial Austrian entrepreneur. He successfully exited an augmented reality agency in Vienna that served prestigious clients such as Volkswagen and Audi across 42 countries. He is now leading Artivive, the Canva for augmented reality. Artivive engages a community of 500,000 creators across 190 countries. Collaboration with world-renowned museums and galleries in Vienna, Munich, San Francisco, Seoul, and Shanghai are still going strong. Unlike many other AR apps and startups we have seen over the years that have risen and fallen. During this interview, we will discuss how the mission and focus of Artivive differs from the many others AR tools that have disappeared over the years, like Meta Spark.
Most of us were very surprised to see Spark going into this direction. But it shows that to rely on advertising to sell AR content, maybe this is not the right business. That's why we decided from the beginning to build something for the creatives.
Matters around copyright and actually who owns the digital space.
Who owns the digital space, right, in a museum? Is it a museum? Because it's digital and it should be somehow open for everybody.
Why they decided to focus on simplicity?
Being in this space is always to go a step back and think on what's the value that we're creating? Is it a gimmick or is it really a value? What's the story that we're telling? Because at the end, nobody really cares about the technology.
And how Artivive unlocks new revenue opportunities for museum and artists.
We have an artist that sold a subscription. So the buyer was paying a monthly fee to get this new content. You get the artwork for free, but you get the digital content extension every month as long as you pay. And one of our museums took all these postcards that were like €1, put them on a new stand with augmented reality postcards €2. Being the same, right? And people loved it because then they're taking this experience with them home and they can experience it again.
But before we get into it, I wanted to thank our sponsor Meshi, who made this episode possible. Meshi is a real powerhouse for generating 3D assets with AI. You can start with a simple text or image prompt and get high quality stylized 3D models in just a minute. One feature I personally love is the ability to create stylized texture for any mesh, with or without UV. And since the release, Meshi's teams keep pushing amazing updates like texture inpainting, ultra-realistic sculpture, and the ability to rig and animate your character. To try it out, go to meshi.ai and start the 7 days trial to access all these incredible features. And now it's time to roll the title and welcome Sergiu under the spotlight. Sergio, it is a real pleasure to have you here.
Gabriele, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So, we not so long ago heard that Spark is closing up. So, where does this leave us in terms of mobile-based AR right now?
That's a very good question. And I think most of us were very surprised to see Spark going into this direction and Meta taking this decision. I think there are a lot of interesting and very powerful tools out there that creatives can use. The easiest way for many artists and creatives that we are working with was in using Spark because people already had either Facebook or Instagram installed, and it was easier to start with these experiences. But at the same time, I think the biggest problem was for Meta to find ways how they can monetize on the content, because the way how the monetization and advertising for Meta works is that you always are scrolling and then you see ads where you might buy something. If you're looking at augmented reality, it's something that you're spending more time and it's taking you a little bit away from the feed that you're used to, and you start interacting. So these are a little bit some experiences that take more time, and it's very hard to bring advertising in these two experiences. And I think that was the reason where they looked at the investments that they did, because they built an amazing platform with all the features that were out there. And I know also from Artivive how much work it is to keep everything working with all the updates and the new smartphones coming. So I think I can understand the decision that they took. At the same time, I'm sure that they're cooking something else for the future. Um, but it shows that maybe this is not the right business model, right? To rely on advertising to sell AR content. That's why we decided from the beginning to build something for the creatives. So our customer are the creatives, and at Artivive we are always looking on what features do they need, how do they use it, how should we develop the product further. We are also very open in the communication with them, and we receive a lot of feedback on how we should do and what features are missing. And I think that this is a maybe more sustainable approach, because they are paying for a service that we're delivering. And therefore, our interest will be always to make them happy, our customers, in order to keep paying for the service that we provide.
So I think also I would like to give a quick impression of Artivive so that people start to understand a bit the vibe and the importance and what you guys have built. Let's show this short clip and then we go back into the conversation.
Artivive is an easy-to-use augmented reality tool that allows artists, museums, and galleries to create a new dimension of art by adding a digital layer to a physical artwork. The digital layer opens doors to a whole new world of possibilities. Artivive is an innovative way for the audience to interact with art. Anyone with a smartphone or a tablet can unlock the artwork and interact with its digital layer. Artivive is a free app available on Google Play and Apple App Store. Artists and museums use our content management system called Bridge by Artivive. We have envisioned to change how art is created and experienced through augmented reality.
So we have seen a bit of an intro of Artivive, some project old, some bit but newer. We are going to see more later on. But we have discussed a little bit about Spark. But what would you say distinguishes you then from other startup, other products that are trying to do something similar, many that have raised and fell and then disappeared? So what makes you stick around?
I will go a few steps back and tell you the experience that I had in the agency that we have built, and we were one of the first using augmented reality for branding and marketing. We had a very diverse set of tools that we used because the technology made it possible. And you could use an app to configure your car, and you could see indeed in real life. At the same time, you could change different wheels and see how it would look like on your car. We also had an implementation with digital user manual in augmented reality, so you get into the car and the dashboard will be explained. But when I had a closer look at the numbers and also the users, I realized that we didn't have as many. And there were different theories, right? It's like we're before the time, maybe people don't understand it. It will take some time until it will be into adoption. But learning in some interviews that I had with users was that they didn't see the value. So it was like a gimmick, right? So we could see, the car in 3D in front of your house, how it would look like. You could take a picture and share it, which is kind of nice. But the wait there is a little bit too long. So they would, still go to the catalog that they will take from the dealer, or maybe to the website because they're already used to the website. So augmented reality in that case didn't really bring any added value. The same happened also with the menu, with the user manual. Obviously, everything in the dashboard is built like in a way that you should already know how it works. And if you don't know how the buttons work and they are for in the car, you will have a hard time to understand how augmented reality works as a user. And if you're were searching for is like how to do that on that, you would rather go to Google than install an AR activation. So fast forward to today, I think our focus is on the creative content. From the beginning, we had a very, I would say, elementary editor. It was an image and a video, because we wanted to push the content into the front and also let the creatives work on the stories that they're telling, and not necessarily use everything that the technology enables them. So I think for being in this space is always to go a step back and think on what's the value that we're creating. Is it a gimmick or is it really a value? And what's the story that we're telling? Because at the end, nobody really cares about the technology, right? So if you're going somewhere and you're using Google Maps, you just want to go from A to B. And then you want to arrive in the shortest time at B. And you don't care that it's using GPS, that it's using internet live data from traffic and AI. You just want to get there. So people, I'm so happy when people are having experiences with the artworks. I don't realize that it's augmented reality. They shouldn't care how it's called and what it is at the end.
Right. So, and this brings me like to the other point, because I always wondered, like, Artivive has a clear focus on art, right? On augmenting art. And of course, it's much easier, and I wouldn't say much easier, but it's a more compelling story where you're telling something that has an artistic angle, other than instead maybe something that is more technical, and
Exactly.
that people are not there to be entertained, right? While instead with art, I am there to learn something, to I'm in the mindset of hearing a story, of discovering something.
Yeah.
So, but then would you say that two things then sounds like made made you successful was that lower entry for creatives to tell these stories, and finding the right um, plane, the right space to tell that story, being in this case augmenting art. Does that make sense?
Exactly, it does. So it is a niche. Now we're expanding, right? So I think that will be a theme for another postcard, is like, what is art, right? But at the same time, we want to have this storytelling, narrative, entertaining aspect. Because I see that there, it's the best place for this technology. And there is also a big need in the space if we're thinking about culture. Unfortunately, there are not so many startups in this field, bringing new tools and helping institutions or artists or culture in general to move forward. And it's more than needed, because if you're going to a museum, most museums will offer you the audio guides. Audio guides were invented in 1950s, and they didn't change a lot. And unfortunately, also not to how the story is told. And at the same time, what I find so interesting about augmented reality is that something that you can do, but you don't have to. So if you're going to a museum and you have, the screens mounted or projections or, whatever other technology, it's somehow kind of in your face. But with augmented reality, it's up to you if you want to bring this artwork to life. Maybe you just want to feel it without the technology. So this is like a very interesting entry in the space without really changing, because the moment that Michelangelo was painting his paintings, he didn't think about augmented reality. So maybe it's a different way how you can look at it with or without the technology. At the same time, we see more and more creatives, and also with Spark and the community that they have built, that are in the space. They're growing up. They're with the technology. They learn how to build the stories, and they're using the technology. But at the same time, it's somehow hard to bring them into the galleries and the museums, because then it's like, should I go if it's a filter? Why should I go to the museum if I can experience it everywhere?
So, but then because there is another element to it, right? So there is the creatives, the artists, right, that have this now new capability to tell different stories, to augment their artwork in ways that they couldn't have done it before, thanks to the creative tool set that Artivive
Mhm.
offers. But there is another side that is the venues, the out of home. So there is all that world, and these two needs to somehow join together, right? Because
Mhm.
otherwise the artist wouldn't have this opportunity. So how do you as Artivive facilitate that? Do you see this
Mhm.
happening organically? How does it work?
So I think because we are in this niche, and we manage through the community to get known in the space, we already have a standing. So we do have institutions reaching out, or brands or projects, and then we're going back to the community and we try to find the best match. At
Mm,
the same time, if somebody is in the community and working with Artivive, and because Artivive was and still is in many institutions around the world, if they're going to pitch an idea that uses Artivive to a client, they said, we already use Artivive, or we already know what's about. So it's somehow a circle where it's a win-win situation. So, through the creatives and the work that they're doing, we get to be known. Being known, we have brands reaching out, which we connect then afterwards with the creatives.
that's great. So I want to go back to one thing that you mentioned before, right? I think it's very important in being also monetization, right? You mentioned about Spark looking for these ads options,
Mhm.
of course. In your case, you mentioned that instead your direct customers are the artist, right? How does that work with the venue as well? Is there like something else that Artivive taps into in that case?
Of course, so for institutions, and some clients, we do these lighthouse projects, right? So where we see a use case, where we see this is great, we would like to tap into. For example, we are working with some brands from different airlines, where they want to understand how they can use this creative space for the rebranding. Or if we're looking at a project that we're discussing with a hotel to have augmented reality artworks in the hotel. So there are some lighthouse projects where we come in, and we do also the whole enterprise part with consulting, with workshops, and then we try to find the best match from either the artworks or the artists who are doing commissioned work. Um, can be also that we have some smaller projects that are reaching out, and then we just try to find the right maybe local artists that they can work with, and that we just connect them. And again, our financial win is through the licenses that they will buy, and the creatives are creating the content. After 11 years being in a marketing agency, what I swore myself when I started Artivive was I don't want to create content anymore. Really want to help creative people create this content. So it was like this shift. So Artivive is not necessarily an agency. We don't want to do the agency work, but we want to facilitate it for our creatives.
One thing before we move forward, because I think that this finance and value part is so important, and I think it's great that you managed to have these lighthouse projects that are more like tailored, where people needs to be educated, there needs to be onboarded, and there is guidance, and also this matchmaking sounds like, right? And there is something that instead is growing organically, right, by selling these licenses and people just adopting the
Mhm.
tool. So if you could look and if you could share any information regarding the kind of like, where does the revenue come from? Is it like 50-50, 30-70? How does that look?
So, as every startup, we have to keep our focus, and our focus is on the recurrent revenue, because that allows us to plan in advance, and also work on features that we want to integrate in the future. So I would say depending on also the seasons. So we see also that in summer, there are not so many projects happening. There is a time where we're looking actively for more lighthouse projects. But if I'm looking into the future, we want to have less and less, so that we can
Mhm.
only concentrate and focus on the recurrent revenue.
So, can you tell us a bit, maybe some example of venues that have used the Artivive together with the creatives in some innovative ways that you think stuck with you?
Yes, so there are so many examples, and it's so interesting because there are so many projects that from then I didn't hear of because there are so many creatives working with it. But I would like to mention one project that we are doing now, I think for the fourth or fifth time. It's street in Toronto, which is called the Junction, and there are like a few shops, and these shops want to use art and creativity to attract people for the Christmas shopping. And what they're doing is they're offering their windows from the shops to artists to create augmented reality experiences. So every shop has a different experience, and we then have an open call where the artists can submit ideas and projects that they want to do, and then the shops can select them. And I think it's so interesting because it's like a collaboration from so many different angles, from retail to city and urbanism, and also with creativity and technology and people coming and interacting. So this is one of the examples that I really like. But obviously also with institutions. So we have some official projects, I would say, where the institutions are reaching out and they already know in a way which are the artists that they want to work with. But you also have artists that just decide to take over some artworks that are already in the institutions. So they just go and use Artivive to project their artworks over, for example, the Mona Lisa. And it's also interesting because then in a way they're starting a dialogue. Is it allowed to do it? What
That was
would
my
they like
immediate
to say?
question also.
Yeah. So as I understand, it's a kind of a gray area because we do not, really use the artwork. So it's just a digital projection in a digital space, in an institution where the visitors paid for the entry. So it's a question where obviously if the owner and the copyright owner of the painting is coming and telling us that there is something that we don't like and it shouldn't be over our artwork, we look at it, and if the artist doesn't have the copyright for it, we will remove it from Artivive. Obviously we cannot look at all the content that was uploaded and see to what it was linked, but at the same time, again, it's opening this discussion: who owns the digital space, right? In a museum, is it the museum because it's digital and it should be somehow open for everybody? So I find this kind of projects also very interesting because it opens some new layers and ways how the creatives and artists can bring their message in a way that it's a little bit how artists are working, because there is also the artistic interpretation. So the moment that you take an artwork and you reinterpret it in a way and it's part of your new artwork, then it's like that distinct freedom. And this is kind of a way how the artists are working with this kind of approach.
It's very interesting, and I mean, how have people reacting instead? So that's kind of like your take, right? But imagine that if in this case, let's say Guernica, right, or any
Mm.
other very famous artwork, right, it could be
Mm.
animated, could be brought to life, and
Mhm.
that kind of honestly can happen also on a screen, right, or on a
Yeah.
TikTok video. Let's be honest, that could happen in many
Exactly.
different ways, right? So, but then it happens with Artivive. But then how is maybe the audience or maybe the venues reacting to this kind of reimagination?
So it's most of the times I have the feeling they don't care a lot, which is good. They also don't. Some institutions are not really seeing the potential of this digital space. I think it's very important to highlight what we are doing is somehow bringing the internet into the institutions instead of bringing the institutions to the internet. So I would say, the most institutions and people mindset is now at that point is like, let's bring everything that we have into the internet. I would like to think that we're a step forward, because the moment that you're visiting a museum, it's not the same as sitting on the couch. So it's the time that you're taking, the commitment that you're taking, being in that room, feeling, or hearing the floor when you're moving, listening to somebody who's talking about an artwork, maybe breathing in the air, and it's all this. Which it's very hard to bring into the digital world, but at the same time, bringing the digital narrative into these institutions and somehow offering a different experience can be very enriched for the visitor.
I wanted to have a quick break to remind you that if you like this conversation, you should check all past episodes at xraispotlight.com. Also, if you don't want to miss anything, remember to subscribe to the XR AI Spotlight newsletter, and you will immediately get an updated list with over 200 mixed reality apps you can filter from various fields, weekly in-depth interviews, and one product spotlight personally tested by me right in your mailbox every week. And now, let's get back to the show. Yeah, yeah. You mentioned this part about bringing digital or going to the physical museum, and there was one thing that I've thought is: are there ways for this journey to continue once you leave the venue? Right, so you go to a museum, you experience that, but then maybe you go home, right? And might be ways in which you can still engage with visitors, keep telling stories. Like, does Artivive
Yes.
do it in any way?
That's a great question. We somehow discovered, through some of the projects that we have done, that the artworks that are in the museum are also in the gift shop. And Artivive and the app doesn't really know if it's now the original or if it's just a postcard or a poster. And one of our museums, what they did is they took all these postcards that were like €1, put them on a new stand with augmented reality postcards €2, being the same, right? And people loved it because then they taking this experience with them home and they can experience it again. So they can also share it with friends, or maybe they can gift it, or have a poster that it's framed and it's also coming to life and telling the story that they experienced in the museum also at home.
This is great, but then this is there a way in which this is done, let's say, kind of like systematically, or used, for example, also by artists as part of their, let's say, the way they earn, the way they share this art? How's that work?
So I think one of the, I think it was a professor from Chicago, teaching Artivive to his students, and he said that for him the most important advantage of Artivive is that an artwork has a new dimension, which is time. So based on that, you can alter the digital content or extend or change over time. The representation, which is in reality, remains the same, but you can use time as a dimension to change it. So if you're looking today, it maybe look totally different tomorrow. So we had, for example, when it was in Corona, an artist made a painting. I think it was more an illustration, and gave it for free as a PDF, and everybody could download it and print it out. And what he did was record himself, because he was living somewhere, outside of the city, recording himself or like his feet walking through the woods, walking on the beach, and every day was another walk. And the idea was walk with me. So it was somehow a window to his life outside, when everybody was keeping distance and staying at home. So I think, based on your question, this is something that can also change. So owning an artwork, which can be a tattoo, right? So it can be a T-shirt that has a print on it, or it can be something that's on the wall. And then in the concept of the artist, there can also be the time. Obviously, it's a total different way of how you're looking and on creating content, because then it doesn't really have an end. Or does it have an end? You know how you're creating something and then you're just building on it and working and iterating and then it's finished. But if you're looking that you have also time as a perspective, this is pushing the finish line a little bit further.
But this is very fascinating, honestly. I mean, I really love the idea. So one thing is being okay, you have augmenting this art, but art can be something that you bring around, that you sell, even opening up new opportunities for people to earn from it, right?
Yes.
Beyond just that single one sale, single one case. But then is also like me as a creator, I can change that digital layer in time and tell another story. So, what is the project? What is the creative vision behind all this, right? So then the meaning of art it's kind of like shifts because it's
Yeah.
something that also from a, let's say, business perspective, right? It's also about retention, right? It's also to get people to re-engage, re-experience. So there is value from my creative side, but also from a platform, from a business perspective.
So I can imagine, for example, we really did have an artist that sold a subscription. So the buyer was paying, a monthly fee to get this new content.
Mm.
So
Wow.
exactly right. So you can as an artist explore this way. It's like, you get the artwork for free, but you get the digital content extension every month as long as you pay me.
That's my. I would have never thought about this. This is brilliant. I mean, I think more people should figure this out. I mean, if you're listening to this and you are an artist, I mean, go try Artivive because I think it's unlocks. And okay, then I'm sorry. How that's managed from the back end? Look, so is there how are the two things linked, right? To
So
make sure
that's
that
that's a great question, because this was the first, thing that moved us. Is like we want to make it as easy as our mothers can use it. So you shouldn't really know more than you need something like a trigger or something that it's starting it, and then a story that you want to tell in a digital space. And this story can be literally anything that's a digital asset. So that's everything that you need, and maybe 10 minutes to upload it and test it. Obviously, the most time goes into creating the content, but it is really this easy to create and update your content. So if you're creating something, let's say like this walks, the artist was he was doing was recording a video with his phone, and every day after the walk he would go home and upload a new video. So that would be in every case is depending on which assets they use. If it's a 3D model, then they would have to upload another 3D model or a new one, and then change the content and just save it.
right. And I want to dig more into that because I think it's important in a sense like what is that people can really create because there is the beginner creator that can just put a video and put it there. I suppose that others can create something more complex like animation, 3D assets, maybe videos that all intertwine. Not sure you can add interaction or so on. But before that, just because I want to make, I think that many people might be interested in this is they when we were discussing about that subscription system, right,
Mhm.
from the artist and Artivive deploying this artwork, was that something that was managed by you? So how do you make sure that someone doesn't receive the updated content once they stop paying the subscription?
That's on the artist side. So they will
Okay.
maybe then just have the latest one, or like the one that they just paid for, and there
Okay.
is no more update. Or maybe
Okay.
the artist can just decide and it's like, okay, you're not paying, I'm deleting, it's gone. So
Okay.
it's up to the artist. You can imagine it's like, so we also try to position it a little bit like Canva for augmented reality. There are so many wonderful and advanced design tools. If you're just thinking about the whole Adobe products that are out there, and there is Canva. which, the idea is the mom and pops can use it to create their things. So we see Artivive also a little bit as, the entry level for augmented reality. And I think that's why we have so many different approaches and ways of how people are seeing it, because they're not in the scene at all, right? And that makes it also easy for them to experience and come with these ideas, because you don't have to code any line. You don't have to understand how the parameters are working, or how to set up a project. You just try something, and then you see if it's working or not. And I think this is, again, what brings the content in front, because from the moment that we started talking, we didn't talk at all about the technology, right? All the examples that I'm bringing you is on the creative side and is on the content side, and not talking about face recognition, because we don't have it, or which particle systems are integrated by Artivive, or how the image recognition tracking and so on. Nobody cares about those things.
But I think the creatives that are listening to this might be willing to hear and understand what can they make in it, right? I also have seen that you guys have launched a new editor, so with new capabilities. So what can people do now with Artivive?
So you can imagine everything that it's, I would say, flat. So we have from paintings, to the tattoos that I mentioned, to stickers, pins, street art, paintings, photographs, beer mats, everything that is somehow printed, can be extended into augmented reality. And we decided that we want to use this trigger-based approach for two reasons. First, it's also from the user experience extremely easy. I have my phone, I start Artivive, I'm looking at something, and then something happens. So I don't have to really understand what happens there. I don't have to scan anything. It works in good and bad light. It works, if I'm looking straight or from a little bit from the side. We somehow managed to perfectionate that technology, or like that aspect. And the second one is we want to give digital content a home in reality, something that's tangible. Because then also the digital extension, or the digital content, the digital artwork becomes unique. There's a scarcity. So you need to have at least a postcard from the museum to see the content. You cannot just go on Instagram and follow somebody, which has the good and the bad part. The good part is that it has a different value, and then you also value it in a different way when you're consuming it. You have to be at that museum, or close to that street art to see it. The downside is you do not have as a big an audience that Spark, or like this social media tools will offer you, but you can monetize on it. Because if you as a creative are responsible for the number of copies that are out there, you can also put a price tag on it.
Right. So when we look at these, like you mentioned that everything that is flat can be augmented, right?
Yes.
And I've seen some example about augmentation can mean, for example, a series of PNGs that create a sort of like 3D parallax effect. I've seen some videos, but how does it all works? I mean, you mentioned particles. I was wondering about interactions. How does that new editor works? What can you do with it?
Perfect, and thank you for bringing me back to the editor. So yes, you have this part with the image, with the tracker, and then you have the digital extension, which can be literally anything from what you mentioned, the PNG sequence. It can be a GIF, it can be a video, it can be just an audio, which can be voiceover or music. And what we did with the new editor is we also have a library of assets that you can use. So maybe you just want a dog in 3D, or an image of a dog for some reason, and you can find it there and use it. It's a library of assets that we want to extend. We're also working on templates so that you can have a little bit of a feeling on what's possible, so that you can see some projects, how they build. And there you can also use tools like, to have text, or the particle systems, where we also have some templates that you can put in. We are presumably launching just one interaction, which will be that you'll be able to, link to other apps or open a website. And the story behind it is in our first prototype, when we tried it out, we had a lot of interaction, and people were overwhelmed. And if we're going a little bit back on what we discussed before,
And
it's like
sorry, the
a li-
creators or the one that were viewing the artwork were overwhelmed?
the ones viewing the artworks.
Okay.
I would say so. This is the so when we started and we had like these limitations in the features, that was at the beginning because we wanted creatives to be focused on the story and the narrative that they're building, and on the other hand, on the users were like, oh, this is coming to life, and then but if you click it and something is happening, and then click again, and this might be appealing for some creatives, but the question is, are the people willing? And then it's like a little bit moving forward from being entertained in this interaction, where it doesn't really add the same value as seeing an artwork coming to life.
Yeah. And also, where does the game start? Because that's the next thing, right?
Yeah,
Because then, oh, I can create games.
yeah,
Can I add
exactly.
scores?
Yeah,
And then you lose focus, let's say.
exactly.
One question regarding also the, let's say, democratization, right? In a way, so that's what Artivive, being, let's say, the Canva for augmented reality, it allows people to create this digital layer. Great. And when we think about that, I always, especially nowadays, imagine of how something like AI could support that effort, right? So if you have an artwork, there could be an element in the artwork that just with the eyes turn into a 3D asset, for example, where maybe a part of the artwork just becomes a movie, becomes animated thanks to AI, right? This is just the two most simples that anybody can think of. What's your take? Have you thought about it? And what about the artists and the people in your ecosystem?
So I think this is an amazing opportunity for very many creative people that maybe don't have the skill set to create different kind of content. For example, I'm very bad at creating illustrations, but there are some tools that you can create illustrations with AI, and then feel somehow empowered. But they also can or reach the limits very fast, because you cannot influence very exactly the output. It's like you have all the prompts, and you can make it better and better, but it's never the image that you had in your head at the end. So I think in the generative AI perspective, we are looking at different tools that are coming out, and they're moving very fast. So I think what we would like to do is to integrate and have some collaborations where we can use maybe some APIs, where the creatives can create some animations. I would say that will be the first thing. Is like maybe you have a
Mhm.
painting and say, let the flower bloom, or some insects move over the flower, and this would be a quick win. And then you can also have some audio. I think in the voiceover and audio guide approach, there is a very good solution from many tools out there. It's almost like you have the impression that it's a real person speaking. So I think that's a huge help also to maybe deliver some messages for the creatives. And we're looking into on how we can integrate it in Artivive. But I think on the AI side, it's not only the generative part that can help us. For example, the image recognition that we have, which is one of the fastest, is also based on AI, right?
Mhm.
So we have under the hood some elements that are using machine learning to make some of the processes in the background faster and more reliable. And I think that's a little bit more interesting than on the generative side. I understand that the generative AI is something that we all see and can work with, and I see that there is a potential. But like you said, we are trying to understand how our creatives are seeing it. It's like, what do you really need? And until now, we didn't have many reaching out. And decide that they want to have more AI tools in Artivive. I think the next big step for us will be also to integrate web AR. We're working on it for a few months now, and I'm very confident that we'll have a solution in the shortest time. It's just the quality, not the one that I would imagine. That's where we, in the app, we can arrange it a little bit better. But I'm very confident that that will be an, next big step for us.
I want to go into next big step, but before that, I was thinking about your consideration about when you said, well, our artists are haven't asked for more AI tools, right? And would you say, because I don't know, the first thought is that are they like real physical artists, like people that were born as artists and then they try to add this digital layer? Because there is, let's say, a fair bit amount of skepticism, fear about how AI is gonna, let's say, replace artistic work. Because to me, and then you're gonna fill it up because you know way
Mhm.
more artists than I do by far, right? So that's why I'm curious about this. To me, it's absolutely a no-brainer. When you have created a piece of art, I can one day I can animate the bee. One day,
Yeah,
as you said, the flower blooms. The other day it gets dark at night. The other day a bird arrives. So all these little elements that could augment and
yeah,
tell a much deeper story that is pretty much controllable. I don't think
yeah.
that right now using let's say start frame and end frame, you can do crazy things that are pretty
That's true.
accurate. So why? I'm just not convinced that it's just, oh no, people are not interested. There must be
No,
something
no,
behind.
no. I'm not saying it's just there are things moving so fast, right? Also with new tools coming out, and like you said, it's like, what we are gaining in 3 months on accuracy, and then how good it gets. That's why we are kind of focusing on what we're offering, because it doesn't stop you to use an existing AI to do exactly what you said and then upload it to Artivive. The question is, obviously, it's much more comfortable to have it directly into Artivive, and that's why we're looking is like, which is the best partner where we can get the best deals for the artist, so it's a win-win situation. On which horse to bet. So this is, and I think artists are very aware, or many artists, and the most that I talked about, and also about opportunities. And I think it's very important to embrace it, because this is something that is here to stay, if we want or not. Um, and we can do amazing things, but just maybe the way how we looked on being the best animator or illustrator in a niche, it's maybe not as important as building the story now. So I think it's shifting from handcraft to story
Storytelling.
that you're exactly, which also is our focus. But this disruption was also when the photography was invented, and at that point, all the artists and painters tried to be as detailed and accurate to reality, and then photography came, and it was the reality. And then it was logging discussions like nobody will need painters anymore. But then painting and art really had a shift and being more creative, because they didn't have to care anymore about how accurate the paintings are. So I think it's the same thing happening now. And you mentioned also that some of the artists are afraid of AI taking their jobs. I think it's still people that will use AI and get faster. For example, I was talking with an artist over the weekend, and he said that he's using AI for the studio studies. So he has some ideas and lets the AI put something out, and then it's like, I think I want to go into this direction. And then in the end, he's painting it, but he's using AI to get some ideas, to brainstorm, and found a way how he can make his paintings or his process a little bit better.
You mentioned about the future of Artivive being web AR. Where do you stand? What can we expect? How does it look right now?
Um, it's still in the development. And Joachim, my CTO, is never happy when I'm talking about it because he's a perfectionist, and he really wants to have everything good and working. But we see that it's the next step. I don't necessarily say that it will replace the app. So I think that, we'll have both options depending on, the setting and the project. Because the moment that you go into a museum and then you have 15, 20 artworks, or if it's only a gallery, or you have a collection or street art, and then you have a kind of a few artworks, having Artivive is much easier, right? So you don't have to scan every QR code, you don't have to wait until everything is downloaded, give access to the camera. So all this is falling down. You just install once an app, and then you can experience everything. You can also record it. But we see that in some cases, people are reluctant into installing the app. We're working very hard on having as many users as possible. But we still see that, in some cases, it would be helpful for the artist, for the creative, or for the project, to have that they are integrated and have an easier entry. At the same time, I think it's just mindset, because you still have the whole thing: open the camera, QR code, give access, wait until it's downloaded, wait until it's loaded,
So
and with
maybe
the
it's
app.
not all great and light and easy anyway, you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
One last question, Sergio. So when do you see this moving from this into the glasses that you're wearing right now?
When we will be able to have the technology in the glasses that I'm wearing right now. So I think the problem with and I was talking with somebody also over the weekend about the Vision Pro, and she was very furious. It's like, why did they put so many things that nobody needs in it? It's so heavy. uh, right, so it's I see that I think in short term solution, the pass-through idea is the more suitable, but at the same time the glasses are looking a little bit stupid for us to wear on the street. You know how the Vision Pro came out, and it were all these funny
Yeah,
faces.
everybody was on the street. Like,
Exactly. And I think I'm not here and don't have the crystal ball to see where the future is. But you're also in the space, and you know that we hear every year that it's this is the year of AR, this is the year of VR. Oculus is out there, everybody will use. So it's kind of ongoing hope, at least in our bubble, at least in our field. And I think that's the problem, is that we are concentrating so much on technology and the hardware, and less on the value that we're creating. I'm also asking, do we need the glasses? It's kind of cool. Of course, for many use cases where we already see it in industry and medicine and so on, where you need your hands, it makes a lot of sense. But I'm in a waiting position to see how it develops. I will be very happy, because obviously this is the best use case for us, right? So have art on the glasses, but at the same time, I'm trying to be realistic, and see
absolutely.
how it will
And
develop.
I think that's also one of the reason why I think you are still around. Artivive is still around, and there are so many people using it. Is because about remaining with the foot on the ground and staying steady. Okay, what is bringing value to the creatives, to the people experiencing art, and that want to indeed learn and see stories in ways that is just merged digital and physical.
Exactly.
Sergio, thank you very much for being with us today.
This was so much fun. Thank you. And yeah, it was an honor to be here.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, please leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really means a lot to me, and it's a great support for the show. Till next time.